Hi there, Pascal with Proctor Talent Services here. Thanks again for downloading my Recruitment Kickoff Strategy form. I'm going to walk you through this form during this mini content tutorial so you can learn exactly how this form will help you organize your recruiting process. If you haven't already, please do check out the recruitment form functionality tutorial right here on this page so that you can see exactly how to customize this form to fit your organization and your needs. In that video, I walk you through saving this as a template and changing and customizing the form to add branding like your logo. I talk about protecting and unprotecting this form. This Word document has been created for you as a form, and I'll show you during this tutorial when and how to protect and unprotect the form to customize and make this a really useful resource and tool for you. I also show you in the functionality tutorial how to hide and unhide the comments that I've saved for you in this document, but I'll also walk you through that here right now. Know that I'd like for this form to be a really useful resource and tool for you, so the comments, like this tutorial, are meant to help you understand the content in this form. So you'll click the Review tab here on your menu bar. If you're using a PC, this may look a little different, but if you're on a Mac, you'll click Simple Markup right here, and you'll be able to click on a comment box and view helpful tips and information here on the right. I like this format because it's clean and you can see the information that's it's being corresponded to, but I do encourage you to dive in and review what's here. I don't have time on this tutorial to give you as much detail as I'd like, so these comments here will be helpful for you. So we're going to hide these comments for now as we dive in. So before we get started, we want to make sure that the form is protected. And I'm also going to turn on the shading so that you can see exactly where information will go. Once you have put in all of your information in this form, you can take off the shading and have a clean document. But for now, we'll turn on the shading. And for this example, I'm working with a hiring manager at an animal rights organization, and I'm helping him find an office manager to join his team. This is a new position, and the hiring manager I'm working with is Mr. Eugene Jackson. And nice bit of trivia for you, my toddler's name is Eugene Jackson, and I like to use that name for my examples. Anyways, Mr. Jackson is the director of operations at this organization, and he is looking for an office manager to join the operations department. Maybe I can type. So the position classification for this role is exempt. And I'm certainly not legal counsel, and we're not going to go through the legalities of what an exempt and non-exempt position is here in this tutorial. You'll see once you review the comments that I've shared a link to the Department of Labor's definition that should be helpful for you. Essentially, an exempt employee is typically not eligible for overtime pay and will receive a salary for compensation as opposed to an hourly wage. But again, I would consult legal counsel to get more information about whether or not your roles are exempt or non-exempt. This will be a full-time position, and typically a full-time position is between 30 to 40 hours of work per week, depending on the state your organization is in. And again, we won't go into the legalities of what constitutes a full or a part-time position here. If you're a hiring manager, I encourage you to consult with your HR team to discuss a position's classification and status. They will definitely be able to support you with that. Because this is a new position, we won't have to fill in the new employee replacing area because this will be the first person in the role. But I do encourage you to include this information here and also include a position ID because this will help you keep your searches organized. So for this example here, we'll just put NA for not applicable, and for the position ID, we'll say it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Remember, this form is meant to help you organize your process, but it's also meant to be a document that serves as a tool of accountability when you need to make decisions about the roles that you're trying to fill. This is why I've listed information like position ID and new employee replacing and the budget code in this form. I would like you to be able to have consistency when it comes to keeping all aspects of your recruiting process organized and also in line with your organization's policies and procedures. Budget codes are relevant not only because it's where you'll specify where this person you'll hire's salary will be allocated to, but any activity pertaining to this person's hire, posting positions, expenses for travel, for interviews, relocation incentives. These are all examples of areas that might have different budget codes or cost implications, and so should be documented and confirmed. Let's say for this example, our budget code is XYZ123. And let's also say that this individual's salary is $58,000 annually. Okay, so the full position description and document and the file location. This section is simply a space where you can import the actual full job description for this position. Now, let's take a moment just to make the distinction between the full position description and the position summary, which you'll include down here. The full position description is a fully detailed outline of the roles and responsibilities and qualifications, and this is essentially the document, almost a contract between you and your employee once they're hired. The position summary, on the other hand, is, as the name suggests, is a summary of this position that's mainly for external consumption, and it's meant to tell just a little bit about the organization, summarize the role and the qualifications for the role, and it's really meant to encourage qualified candidates to apply and deter those who are unqualified or just not meant for your organization, your team, your culture, your mission. Mr. Jackson and I have already reviewed and finalized our office manager full position description, and we are allowing access to this full description directly from this form. So in order to do that, we will insert an object, and you can do that by either clicking on the insert and then object in the menu drop down, or you can insert an object by clicking on this icon here. You'll be taken to a pop-up window which will allow you to choose the object type to include in the form. And this list here allows you to choose a blank document. And you'll also want to make sure that this display as icon button is checked. That way you'll actually get this icon here in your form as opposed to all of the contents of the document itself. So we are going to insert our position description from a file. And I will insert it here. And as you can see, the document is now part of the form. And if I double click it, it will take me directly to my office manager full position description. You can also use this space to insert a file location. So what I mean by that is, say your organization has an intranet, and on this intranet you house all of your full descriptions that are accessible to your hiring manager, in which case you would just simply copy and paste the link, to the full description and insert it as a hyperlink. So let's go ahead and change the text so we know what we're inserting and saying this is the office manager position description. Copy and paste the address, hit OK. And now I'll be able to actually click on the link and pull up the full description from the internet site or wherever online you might be keeping your description. Great. Now that Mr. Jackson and I have inserted our full office manager position description as both a document and a file location link so that we have easy access to it, we are going to protect our form and continue completing it. So the position summary again is a snapshot of the role that we're recruiting, And luckily, we have saved our position summary as part of our full position description, which makes it very easy for us to copy and paste it here. The position promotion activities section is the area where Mr. Jackson and I are going to brainstorm the tactics that we'll use to promote the office manager role. It is simply not enough for us to post the role on this organization's career page. Mr. Jackson and I know that a concerted effort needs to be made to find the ideal person for this role, and that can come in many different forms. So we've taken time and used this area to brainstorm our position promotion activities. So I'm going to copy and paste it here for us to keep track in the form. All right, moving on to page 2. We're almost done. So, like additional promotion activities, a conversation about the ideal candidate qualifications and attributes is an important one for you to have with your hiring manager if you're a recruiter, and with your recruiter if you're a hiring manager. Mr. Jackson and I are using this area to not only discuss the qualifications as outlined in our full position description, but also the traits, values, and the nice to haves that will make this person successful in this role and within this organization. So, if you're a hiring manager, your input around ideal candidate qualifications and attributes are important because, of course, you're supervising this role and you'll know what's necessary for this position. And if you're an HR recruiter, your input is tremendously important because you'll be able to help your hiring manager understand what's happening within the candidate market so that realistic expectations can be set for the selection process. Mr. Jackson knows that the office manager is a critical role for the organization, and he wants to try to find the perfect person. But just because someone isn't perfect does not mean that they're unqualified. So, taking the time to discuss and prioritize the must have qualifications and the ideal attributes will help you screen and vet your candidates with more ease. So, here are the areas that Mr. Jackson and I have discussed and highlighted as ideal candidate qualifications and attributes. Depending on the role you're hiring, your selection process might include a series of candidate activities that need to be completed. So, for example, Mr. Jackson and I have determined that a phone screen with human resources, a phone screen with him, an in person meeting with the operations team, and a SharePoint skills assessment will be required for this selection process. We'll document these activities here so that we can be on the same page around these activities when we're communicating to candidates. And again, for accountability's sake, to ensure that we're being consistent for all of our candidates when it comes to their interview experience. Moving on to recruiting team members and roles. In most cases, and in an ideal selection process, in my opinion, the hiring manager will have decision rights around who will ultimately be hired for this role. That's why, as the recruiter, I'm having this conversation with Mr. Jackson. However, although I'm working directly with Mr. Jackson to find an office manager, the office manager that's hired is not going to work solely with Mr. Jackson. So, insight from a recruiting team around what good looks like for this new hire will be valuable for Mr. Jackson. So, for example, Mr. Jackson would like to have the facilities manager be a part of the selection process. Riley, the facilities manager, will work very closely with the office manager on a day to day basis. So, insight to Mr. Jackson from Riley around personality and team fit will help Mr. Jackson make a decision. Likewise, Sanja, the finance manager for the organization, will probe bookkeeping skills from Mr. Jackson and help him make an informed decision around that skill set. I recommend not having more than 4 or 5 people on your recruiting team. You don't want to overwhelm your candidates, and you don't want to have too many cooks in the kitchen. This target interview timeline section is here to help you plan out and specify when you and your recruiting team intend to conduct interviews during this selection process. So identifying as early as possible when your candidate activities are going to take place will help you have goalposts for your process, and having a good idea about target timelines will also give you a plan to communicate to your candidates. And yes, things change and stuff happens, so this section is simply to help you highlight your target dates. However, and especially if you're working with a large recruiting team, using this section to specify any areas or any time that there may be conflicts is going to help you plan. For example, Mr. Jackson would really like Sanja to participate in the selection process, but Sanja is taking PTO Thursday and Friday of week Y, which we can see is the first round of interviews. So we will know not to schedule Sanja as part of the first round interviews since she won't be available for part of that week. Okay, moving on to recruitment kickoff approvals, the final section of this form. Yay! So again, if you're a hiring manager, you hopefully have decision rights as to who is selected for your open role. And if you're a hiring manager and you're not empowered to make those decisions, please do reach out to me and I'll help coach you as to how to make a case as to why you should be the one making decisions around your open roles. Mr. Jackson is partly accountable for the success and challenges his new office manager is going to have. So he, like any hiring manager, should definitely have input and approve the selection process. Okay. Human resources, or more specifically, recruiters like myself, need to have input and agree with the selection process to not only provide guidance to the hiring manager and the hiring team, but to also ensure that the process as a whole is being executed compliantly. So we'll add the recruiter as part of our approval. And then lastly, someone on your finance team should really be involved and grant approvals in this process, or at the very least provide guidance around what you have in your budgets. And that's it, your kickoff strategy form content tutorial. We have walked through a thorough plan to find a fantastic office manager for Mr. Eugene Jackson and his team, and hopefully this has been really valuable and useful for you. Thank you again for downloading. Happy recruiting and good luck.